All set, Michael? Online? They're on. Thank you. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Teresa Olson. I am the Senior Director of Talent Acquisition here at Burwood Group and also serving as President of Burwood Women in Tech this year. I'd like to welcome you all to our second annual International Women's Day event hosted by BWIT. So with that, I would like to introduce our phenomenal moderator, Kim Richmond.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kim Richmond. I'm the practice director for our collaboration platforms and end user computing practice. Yes, that's a long name, and I'm sorry. I am the training committee chair for BWIT this year, so I'm happy to help with this event today by moderating the discussion. So first, I wanted to start off with a little bit of background for IWD this year. So at the current rate of progress, it will take up to 2158, which is roughly 5 generations from now to reach full gender parity, according to data from the World Economic Forum. Imagine the benefits of working in a role supported by an inclusive culture with respectful and understanding colleagues. Accelerating action for women in the workplace requires a comprehensive and strategic approach that focuses on addressing systemic barriers, creating inclusive environments, and promoting gender equity in every aspect of work. So with that, that's our theme for today, accelerating action. So with that, we'll go ahead and introduce our panelists. If you could each introduce yourself with your name, your company and role, and share a brief personal anecdote or reflection on what accelerating action means to you. We'll start with Tejal.
I'm Tejal. I'm with Burwood. I'm a senior network engineer here. And I kind of forgot what was I going to say?
Just a anecdote or reflection on what accelerating action for women's equity means to you.
So I have one of those questions come too. So I kind of have looked it up. I think it's really important. For me, it means that we are all on the same page. We are all moving to the same goal and we have the same opportunity. So it kind of hits home for me.
Hi, everyone. Gina Blackmore, Customer Success Executive from Cisco Systems. This is very important to me because I feel it's paving the way for equality for not only my daughter, but future generations as well.
Hello, everyone. Seth Moreau, Chief Strategy Officer here at Burwood. And accelerating equity means first acknowledging that there's an opportunity to do so, and then taking action, big or small. I'll talk a bit about that later on, but that just the acknowledgement that there's an opportunity for equity is step one.
Very good. And Priya, she's virtual with us today. If you want to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm honored to be here. My name is Priya Iyer. I'm the engineering leader from Cisco. And accelerating action to me, it is more about using our voice to make these issues more visible, just like how we're having these conversations and taking a baby steps to get there. So yeah, thank you for having me here and looking forward to this conversation.
All right, very good. So we'll start with our first question. This one's for Tejal. Why is gender equality important and why does it matter? And also, if you do have another comment after she's done answering, feel free to jump in.
Gender equality in my mind is about like basic human right. It's about giving everybody the same opportunities, access to the same resources, same chances of growth, equal respect. At the core, it's about fairness. And when you don't treat a whole group of people with a different scale, it's just not fair. That's what it comes down to. So the importance comes with it's the morale, right? You are kind of hurting the morale. You need to treat it's just you need to treat everybody the same. you're going to have really good working environment. At the end of the day, that's what it's about. People are going to have a fair place to work and a good fun time.
All right. Very well said. Next question's for Priya. What do you believe is the biggest challenge of gender equality?
Maybe I would like to start with a personal experience that I had. So last year, I had a requisition for the solution engineering role, and we had around 100 applications for that. Guess how many female candidates? Just one. And that's really what we're talking about here. And it may seem easy for many part of the countries, but equal access to the education is really fundamental. Many parts of the world, and I have seen that firsthand where I come from the country, and girls have limited access to their education, right? Which really restricts their opportunities and their economic independence as well. And some of the stats, I think if you look at global stats of how many women make up to the CEO population, it is 5%. In US, it is 6%. So we are looking at that number, shocking numbers, like 5% to 6% global. And I would say we are blessed to be part of the organization where we may not be experiencing these issues, where, if you talk about gender pay gap, we may not be experiencing in some of the organizations, but it remains one of the most visible and persistent issue. And just looking at stats for 2024, right? Women earned an average of just 85% of what men earned. That's a huge gap. And there are a number of issues. One other thing I would also call out is the cultural and societal norms that still exist, right? And I have experienced that myself. I come from India, and traditional gender roles are still deeply rooted in many societies. That kind of dictates how you behave, what your career options should be, what your personal goals should be, right? And I know this is a big topic and I can keep talking about that, but I would say I know that always shifting these culture norms is challenging, but that is crucial of how we can get there. And conversations like this certainly helps a lot.
Oh, absolutely. So I had a quick follow-up question. So only one woman applicant for that position. I guess I feel like that happens a lot in some of these technological positions. What's some steps or ways that you feel like you could help, or that we could help bridge that, get more women to apply?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's more about education. I would say look for opportunities where we can mentor and coach. And certainly we can talk more about that in the upcoming sessions as we continue kind of deep dive into it. But look for opportunities how we can mentor these high schoolers and college students where we can help them in their journey. And that's continue to be a challenge. We cannot bridge the gap. It is going to take its own sweet time. But what we can do, all those baby steps count towards it.
Absolutely. Any other commentary from the other moderator or the panel? Okay, great. Move on to our next question. This one's for Gina. What has been the most significant challenge you faced, and what action did you take to overcome that?
So during my career, I was faced about 9 years into my career, forced with the choice if I wanted to keep going in my career or if I wanted to stay at home and take care of my family. Unfortunately, I had what I like to call my life trifecta. I had 3 major life events happen in a matter of about 3 years. My dad passed away unexpectedly. I had my first child, and my mom got sick, who lives out of state. So I was faced with the really tough reality check of, do I want to keep going and try to make this all work and kind of burn out very quickly, or should I take a step back for a couple of years and just see where it goes? And a lot of women are faced with this challenge. Some of us more fortunate than others that we have partners that we can suffice on one income. But it's really challenging. And I was on my way up the corporate ladder, and it took a big toll on me mentally. because I wanted to keep pursuing it, but I felt it was best for my family and myself to take a step back. What I thought would be a couple of years out of the corporate world ended up being close to a decade. Within that time, though, I mean, I wouldn't change anything. I started 2 small companies, which gave me a ton of experience that I probably would have never got in corporate America. And then as my kids got older and my mom got better, I wanted to go back into the corporate world. And that was yet another challenge that I faced because people didn't, you'd been out of the work stream for so long. They're like, well, you have a huge gap in your resume. But I started 2 companies by myself. They didn't want to recognize that. And I have to say, I had to call out a gentleman who's no longer with Cisco, but during my interview panel, of all the places I interviewed and gained my foot back in the door, no one recognized that experience of taking the time away to spend with your family, starting a small business and really making things work. But one gentleman I interviewed with at Cisco said, I don't care about all your corporate experience. This is the most important experience. And to this day, I mean, I remember it so well and really gave you that extra boost of confidence.
That's great. So I have a follow-up question for you
Yeah.
too. So honestly, mental health is very important in any industry. So I guess if you do find yourself, facing that decision, if I need to take a step back or even dive in more, like what's your advice for someone that's looking at that decision?
Just explore all options and be honest with yourself. Everything is going to happen. That's going to happen. You can try to have as much control over it, but I think just really being realistic and having realistic expectations, and then also being prepared. So when things do come up, you have options that you can choose that will be best for you. And then also in the corporate world, there's so many programs. It's really taking the initiative to find those.
Very good. Any other comments from the panel? Okay, great. All right, this next one, how can we better support women in navigating career advancement opportunities within our industry? Let's start with you, Seth.
All right. One is make sure you leverage, but sitting down with each of your team members, particularly the women, to understand their career aspirations, their work-life balance, desires, where they want to be, and then leveraging your network to connect them with opportunities. Sometimes it could be simple as a mentoring opportunity, where they just want to learn from another female who may be in a higher role. They want to learn kind of how they got to where they were at. Other times it's, I really want to do X, Y, or Z. It's being able to leverage your network to be able to say, hey, this person also is interested in X, Y, and Z, and then be able to make those connections and just help provide those opportunities and build confidence in the relationships that you can also be a trusted advisor and an advocate for what they want, and also understand maybe some of the challenges they've historically had, particularly in technology. Technology industry is much better than it used to be, nowhere close where it should be. And so understanding maybe some of the struggles, some of the roadblocks, some of the just challenges that one of your female colleagues has undergone, and try to help do what you can to fix and change the narrative and provide opportunities so that it doesn't feel like such a steep hill to climb, and level the playing field wherever possible. And so just listening, understanding the wants and needs from a career and a challenging a skill set perspective, leveraging your network, and just being there and advocating makes a huge difference, and gives people a voice that still is unfortunately not as natural as it should be. And so by being there and providing that can help break down some of the barriers, particularly within the technology space that still unfortunately exists.
Yeah, these are all very good points. I mean, if as you work your way up as like a woman in technology, you got to bring everybody with you, right? Like make sure that they don't have to fight the same battles, right? That's how we're going to progress. Tejal, did you also have a response to that?
The women who are up there definitely have a responsibility to bring everybody along with, but I also think I'm just going to say men. The men who are up there need to recognize that women do want that, and sometimes I feel like women don't ask for it. It'll have to be a two-way street. I think women need to ask for it too, but men need to pull the women up. It's going to be a two-way street for us to go up. And
Hopefully not two-way. We don't go back down, right? Yes. Yes, absolutely. All right, very good. Okay, next question for Gina. What initiatives have you seen to be successful in driving not only gender equity, but gender equality within your organization?
Sure. Cisco does a really good job of equality. There's multiple groups, EROs. One thing that particularly stands out is we have an unbiased culture training every employee is mandated to do annually. So it's not just when you start the company or but it is a different training every year. And it gives you just a different perspective on issues or situations you might come across. And it just makes you aware and a little bit more prepared of how to interact with those situations. And I think it just gives a very good foundation of keeping things top of mind of those encounters you might run across.
Very good. All right, next one's for Seth. Going back to him. What role can men play in accelerating action for women's equality?
That's a big, heavy question. So some of it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Is one, talking, listening, trying to identify opportunities, but it's also just stepping back, recognizing that there are opportunities for equity that may not be obvious. It's often little things that may be present. So in a meeting, observe who's talking. Observe, more importantly, who's not talking. And then try to understand why. Sometimes there's a gender role situation taking place consciously or subconsciously. So learn how to support people feeling comfortable sharing their voice or providing enough oxygen in the room for someone to speak up and provide how awesome they are. It's also, if there is not a female in the room and males are being unprofessional in any way, call it out, because you have to stop and discourage that behavior, because if it's happening there, then it's probably happening in subtle ways out in the cubicles, out at a after hours, out in a meeting. And so you have to just stand up and call it out and not be afraid of it, not afraid of calling it out. Groupthink is kind of a default human position. Don't be part of the group. Say something, do something about it. And also when it comes to education opportunities, training opportunities, what have you, be aware of those. And again, match those with people's desires and wants and try to help support. But often it's the little things that turn into big things that you don't see. It doesn't necessarily, it's not going to wear, sparklers and announce itself. It's going to be little things that make a big difference. And so making those changes, being aware and nudging those behaviors to the appropriate place is where things will start to change. I've been in a couple situations where I've had to call people out. It's a bit uncomfortable because culturally, from a society perspective, that's just human being, it's kind of hard. But you have to do it because it's not right. And if it's happening there, it's happening in other ways. It's happening when resumes are being reviewed. It's happening during meetings. It's happening during, promotion discussions, what have you, even without people understanding that. I would encourage people to read a lot about some of the biases that are built into some of the early LLMs and learn how those biases creep in, not intentionally, but it's just the way that we work often as a society and our culture. And that's happening in the workplace, at schools, what have you. And so it's just being aware of those and correcting those, and then making sure not only you're correcting, but identifying opportunities through your network, and also just being there to support. The other thing is to think about one's partner, daughter, third cousin twice removed. Like, would you want her to experience something like that, or not experience something, not have an opportunity? And oftentimes when you're able to frame even your own observations in that context, get a fire. And so use that fire to make some changes. And I think men in particular have the opportunity to really make a difference, to help pave the way and open the doors that may be unintentionally closed for female colleagues, peers, what have you. And it's our duty and it's our obligation to make sure that the equity continues to grow through oftentimes small actions turn into big results.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a technology discussion if AI didn't come up from a bias perspective.
Yeah, big AI paid me to bring it up.
Right. So I love all those points. I mean, men supporting women, especially like going back to Gina's example.
Hello, our virtual people. Sorry, we're doing a battery swap in the room. So one moment, temporarily, the video has died. Okay, and then we're back.
Okay, this next, sorry, was there any other comments from the panelists on that one? Okay, we'll move on to next question. This is for Priya. How can we better measure the effectiveness of our efforts to accelerate action for women's equity?
Yeah, for me, it is more about taking those small and consistent steps to change the way we think, change the way how we present ourselves. So a small, just example, what I would like to share from last year, we hosted 150 high school girls from Chicago Public School, part of our Cisco WISE, which is one of the ERO that Gina was talking about, which is Women in Science and Engineering chapter that I co-lead. And these young adults are small. They're, they're smart. They're asking great questions in terms of, hey, what are the mentoring opportunities they have, and how we operate, just understand the organization aspect of that, what are the different roles, and just so many interesting questions. And the mentoring is key, as Seth mentioned. If you have a time and bandwidth, there are so many good programs out there, like iMentor. You have Cisco Network Academy that you can contribute. And these are all great programs where we can help these young adults to shape their future. I would like to also share one of my own personal experience to this is when the position that I'm in, when that position opened up, my leader, he was deliberately looking for female candidates. And it is not easy, as we can all imagine. When the recs open up, we always have time bound and we have pressure to close the rec, and we are looking for right candidates and all that good stuff. He had shortlisted candidate at the time, 4 female candidates, which was a total surprise. It doesn't happen oftentimes, and it is a deliberate action from a leader as how we can bridge the gap. And I was hired through that. So I just want to share that experience as how we can help our young adults in general, but how we can take those small steps to make it happen.
It's the second time baby sets have come up, so it's a common theme. All great points. Thank you. Okay, this one's for all the panelists as well as the audience, if you do have a comment or two. How can we work together as individuals, organizations, and industry to create lasting change and accelerate progress towards gender equality? Whoever wants to start.
Issues that I had is, we are both working parents, right? At some point, something has to give. And what was interesting is, we both had good careers going, my husband and I both. But at the end of the day, I stepped back and he kept going. So I feel like maybe there has to be something that, men should have the liberty to be taking that option too. And I don't think they have that option. It did not feel like, if I went ahead and he stayed back, it was going to be a healthy environment. So I think that's one of the things. I think women end up taking the lion's share of the home stuff. They do take the step back. Maybe, they don't see, right? For me too, it was very hard for me to see where I'm going to, and it was very easy for him to see where he was going to go at. And I think that kind of also impedes the women's progress.
Absolutely.
I think everyone has mentioned this, but just to reiterate, it is a two-way street, and women do need to speak up and be at the forefront and make it consistent. We have these amazing functions this time of the month, but to keep it going and keep it at the forefront so it doesn't die down is not just a thought for a particular month.
I think it's being aware of functions like this, organizations like this within your community, understand what's going on with your community as well, seeing what you can do to support. Are there educational scenarios? Are there other situations where you can lend your support, your voice, male or female, to be able to just help add to the numbers, add to the perspectives, to help shine light on the importance of equity and the importance of opportunity, because otherwise it can just be small pockets, and that's okay. Good things start in small ways, but when you see it, take advantage of being a part of it and learning from it. Read, be empathetic, and walk a mile in others' shoes goes a long way of being able to understand fellow human beings and being able to identify opportunities to increase equity.
Very good. Priya, do you have an additional comment?
I think I may be repeating some of this, but I would say I agree. There are so many opportunities out there for within organization or outside opportunities where we can either contribute to these EROs or support mentorship opportunities or coaching opportunities for high schoolers or college students, things like that, or even just be persistent in your, even if it is maybe a baby step that we may be taking, but every step counts.
Absolutely.
The one thing I would add is, and you all have done it so beautifully today, is contributing your story. I think, as a working mom myself, like hearing that other women are also facing those hard decisions and possibly having the same conversations with their partners, but hearing that other women are doing it or coming back into the workforce and being successful and contributing to their communities. I think the more we're vulnerable and tell those stories and communicate that to our mentors, our bosses, male, female, or whatever, it normalizes it in a way and keeps it at the forefront. I think what Gina was saying, that like it's International Women's Month, it's International Women's Day, but do we talk about this in November? Do we talk about it in the middle of summer when we're juggling summer camps and kids being homesick and all of those things? I think the more we share, the easier it will become to call out those small ways in which women are not necessarily being put forward.
Thank you guys for sharing your stories. I agree with Natalie that just saying them out loud helps a lot. But I've been sitting here playing devil's advocate in my own head here, thinking about that one out of the 100 candidates, the one lady. Did she get preferential treatment because she was a woman? And that's the other flip side, devil's advocate part of this, is that you also have to think about, okay, women are the default parent. It happens. It just falls on us. So if, like Tejal was saying, it was her career or her husband's career, and it ended up being hers because you're the default parent. Sorry, we're ladies. But I think that in order to fully change that mentality, it's not just ladies that have to talk about this. So Seth, I really appreciate that you've been pushing that it's not just the ladies' problem. It is also on the men's side of things. You also have to think about, okay, well, if you were going for those candidates and it was only women that were pulled, what do the men who are applying for those positions, what can they do to also feel equity in the same space? We can't just be saying, well, women are the only ones that have problems. And I know it's International Women's Day. We're focusing on women right now. And I'm kind of bringing a downer to all of this. But I think that it has to be a full discussion with everybody. It can't just be ladies leading the charge. It is very important for men to also understand that, you know, we can't always be the default parent. We can't always be the one to step back from our career. Sometimes it's a much harder conversation, I think, than anybody wants to have.
I think one way is to higher appreciate women nominated roles. For example, a lot of women naturally fill operation roles, supportive roles. I think if we value these roles to a higher standard and pay equally, or like teachers as a prime example. Again, a very much women-oriented role. Usually there's way more female teachers than male teachers. I think if we as a society value these roles in a higher way, I think that will naturally allow us women to get paid, or not even paid, but treat equally. It shouldn't be us trying to go to a technical role to be equally paid, same as a male role, male representative would. It should be the same for us, what we are naturally are able to do in a better way, if you guys are following me correctly. So I think if we as a society are start looking at it from that perspective, naturally women will be paid at the same level as men would, for example. So that's my perspective.
So I appreciate so many comments that have been made. I wanted to focus on something that Priya brought up about, you know, extending to younger people like high school age and what have you. And I'm reminded of a conversation we had last year after this event, and talking about, you know, we've got to kind of do a mental shift and change our own behaviors if we're going to normalize these conversations. And I think about, again, that conversation was, we have to normalize at a much younger age, encouraging people way younger than high school, right? When our daughters come to us and say, I want to be an astronaut, what would I tell my son? Awesome, be an astronaut. My daughter, would I have said, well, it's really hard, but you can do it? No, we have to normalize that kind of discussion. And then all of a sudden, females will advocate for themselves more. They will ask for what they want. They will not be concerned about the perception that has, because we've been treating them differently than some of us older folks have been programmed from the time they're younger. So again, that just reminded me of a conversation we had a year ago today, and I thought that was pertinent.
If I may, from the WebEx, well said. I just absolutely love
That just made me think of a story. This is just a couple weeks ago, and this will show you how young it starts. But I had some friends and acquaintances over that had their kids over. All kids are running around, and one of the girls ran up to us, and she's like, well, you know, boys are smarter than girls. She was 5 years old. I don't know them well enough to know where that would have come from. But my point is that it's permeating at such a young age, and it could just be happening in this subconscious way. So it is really important to start young.
I think it's just the way that people associate the smartness, right? I think very often I have this conversation with my husband, who's a software engineer, right? Like the way he thinks, the way I think, it's like two different, obviously we think in a very different way that doesn't mean he's smarter than me, or I'm not as smart as him. Like we complement each other in the best way. Hence, to my point, I think some of the roles that I mentioned, so as a teacher, those are not easy roles. These people should get paid a lot of money for the work that they do, and they don't, which is so unfair. So, and they don't get leaves for mat leaves. That's insane, right? Like they should, right? Like, but we as a society, we don't fight as much for that, right? Like, why don't we? Like, those are very hard roles that these people do, and that's what I meant by my comment originally.
All right, so kind of following up with that one, what I found interesting is that during the pandemic, while it did screw up a lot of things, one of the things that it did do is my daughter's 9. She was 5 when the 4 or 5-ish when the pandemic started, and seeing all the parents home at the same time kind of put an even ground on all the kids, because all the parents were home, working from home or doing whatever they needed to do, and it kind of was a little reset button. So for example, that thing I said about the default parenting, that kind of changed in my house after the pandemic, because now my husband and I can both work from home. So it's not always me taking the sick days. It's not always me having to pick her up from school. He's also home. So he can also kind of do those default parent things that nobody thought about before. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see when the kids of the pandemic get into the workforce, if it's going to change the layout of equality at all. I think that it will, and I think it'll get better. But maybe I'm just optimistic.
I was just going to make a comment. As a girl dad, I know there's a lot of girl dads here. I say my daughters are 16 and 13, and I do see the challenges in the workplace, right? As a hiring manager, especially on the technology side. My conversations I have with my kids, it's like, let's be self-aware. Let's acknowledge that it exists, but what can we do? How can I connect you to the network? What do you need to learn to making sure that you even that playing field, so there is no excuse. So I think that's the encouragement I give to my daughters, especially as my daughter is starting to figure out what she wants to do in her career as a sophomore right now. But I think the fact that it's just having those hard conversations and saying what's the art of the possible, and then, hey, supporting those dreams and what can I do personally on my network, and introduce other mentors too. Yeah.
I appreciate that, because it's about acknowledgement that there is a challenge and that it's not equitable, but not in a defeatist way, right? It's like acknowledging that the problem exists and helping your girls or younger women gain different tools or access to different tools to overcome those challenges. So it's not like a doom and gloom, just this is the way it is. It's this, unfortunately, is the way it is, and we will incrementally make it better for you and for younger generations.
Dad moment. Yeah. Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, many in the room. Little hope for future generations, though, because there's a situation even this morning where I'm taking our 8-year-old daughter down to Illinois to her first basketball game tonight, and she wanted to wear her jersey to school, and or her Illinois jersey to school, and it's like her sister's like, well, only boys wear jerseys, you know. She's like, yeah, it's okay, and she has friends that are boys, so she's had play dates with boys, so just the behavioral stuff that, like, you know, one generation away was like so taboo, right? Or so different. And there were so many more boundaries of just things you should or shouldn't do as a girl are definitely changing. And it's nice to see some of the younger kids that don't even think about any of these things. It's just more of a natural, like, acceptance around some things that have definitely changed certainly since I was a kid. So I thought that was kind of interesting on Women's Day. I'm like, yeah, good for you. Wear the jersey, you know?
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, I run to that a lot with my daughter. She's always just like, well, only boys do that. I'm like, I do that. Like, what are you trying to say? Like, it's just kind of interesting. Okay, so I think we're going to move into the Q&A section So this is really just any questions from the audience, either online or in the room. You can ask a quick question to the panel and do that for a few minutes.
All right, so this is for Gina. So you were talking earlier about how you got back into your career after taking an extended break. And you answered most of my questions that I was thinking about as I was going through, but I was wondering if you have any advice for people who might be doing something very similar. I mean, not that I'm leaving anytime soon, but like anyone who's watching who might be needing to take a break or something, is there a good way to kind of head that off before you get there?
Sure. I think staying connected and still networking, that was how I got my foot back in the door. And so funny story, I was with the girlfriend and she had said, because honestly, I never thought about going back into corporate America. I didn't think I could after being out so long. I was playing tennis with a friend of mine and she's like, I can't play more. I'm going back to work after 16 years. And how the hell did you do that? Oh, I just reached out to some of my old bosses and they're starting a new company. Can you get me an interview? So 2 things. Don't be discouraged. Network, keep your network going and never give up. Went in, so it'd been a decade. I show up in a suit for this interview. Everyone's in jeans and t-shirts, half my age. So it was a big wake up call, but I didn't give up. I got discouraged, but I didn't give up. And then I started just reaching out to my old managers, old contacts that were still working. And that's how I got my foot back in the door. I worked at Verizon. So got my foot back in the door and then wanted to grow because I kind of came back in an entry level job, which sadly I was making more when I left a decade ago than what I came back into. So and that was hard to swallow. But I wanted to get back in and I just had to swallow my pride a little and do that. And thank God I did, because then I was working a lot with Cisco and then ended up moving over to Cisco and being in this amazing company and career, and couldn't have worked out better. So again, 3 things: don't give up, keep networking, and stay consistent.
I did take an 8-year gap, and my networking was just social networking. I didn't realize that I would ever come back into the technology field. I'm just a social person and I kept in touch. That's how I ended up at Burwood. But I think women do not understand the importance of networking, and we need to focus a lot more. A lot of opportunities will open up with networking. We talk a lot about kids and all of that, but we don't talk a lot about work. I think that needs to happen. We need to talk a lot and network forward instead of, like I did. Oh, I want to keep in touch with her. She's a really good person I worked with. But we need to do that more consciously.
Questions? I'm gonna stand so you guys can see me. Hi, I have a bit of a past, present, and future question, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it. Have you noticed any significant changes in the tech industry regarding gender diversity during your career? And what would you say, if any, are the most promising trends for the future?
I was doing the exact same job before I left, and there weren't women in the room. They were not. Saying that I'm going to go pick up my kid or things like that were not normal, I feel like that has normalized. I'm seeing more women. I see progress. I feel like there's still more progress to be made because, but I feel it's moving in the right direction. It's definitely, I am hopeful.
Okay, just to throw out there, one of the things that maybe we can all help and educate women that are looking to, grow their careers and so forth. As a hiring leader, I see that when a woman applies, and there's statistics aligned to this, women will apply 3% to a role versus 90% of a role that a male will apply to. The reason being is that men will apply if they fit one or two skills that is required in the position. Women are looking to fit 90 to 95% of those listed skills that are, so that's a breakdown there alone. So maybe there's opportunities for organizations to kind of revisit the job description, and there's all kinds of tools out there that you can remove the bias and, you know, show some flexibility. But I think that is really important to educate everybody else on when, you know, we are looking to hire, you know, we want the best and the right person. However, we need to make sure that it is listed in a way that is inviting to all.
Matter, because that has made me feel a little bit like the way women answer to questions is different from what a male does. And does that affect in like, oh, I like the person, or yes, we should move forward? Like, does that have an impact?
That doesn't have any impact at all from my experience personally. I think it's interesting because women, if they do take the leap of faith and they do apply to that role where they have some of the skills, what they think, women have a better way of articulating and painting that clearer picture of you seeing them successfully within the role than men do. So that's an interesting take. But yeah, it's definitely not, it doesn't have anything to do with how they answer questions or anything like that. I think it's more the confidence to apply to that role. And that is leaps and bounds right there. Just taking the step.
Your comment was part of the issue could be how we define the roles in the job description. So what could we look to change with respect to how we put those out there today?
Like I said, there's lots of tools out there that help you remove biases, right? And welcome all genders. But some of the things that we do, if you look at a job description, they are based on traditions. What do you see traditionally? It's a laundry list. It's the easiest way to state it. And it speaks a lot about all these, you know, things that you have to do. And when you think that a woman is going to go to the position, and if they don't meet 90 to 95% of those laundry listed items, then that's discouraging them. So maybe what I'm saying is you reduce, because when it comes down to it, being in hiring, you're always at some point making some type of compromise. Nobody is ever going to be perfect to fit the role that you're looking for. So what are you willing to compromise on? And what is the absolute must-haves for the role? So maybe that would be the best start in my mind, is what is the absolute must-haves, and articulating it in a way where one that has that experience will be more forward to applying. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's actually interesting because we were at the Chicago CIO had the women's leadership panel on Wednesday night, and some of the themes you talked about were front and center, where there was a sense that women can be more conservative, right? And this is coming from the women leaders in the room, right? Can be more conservative in applying, or maybe not asserting themselves in situations. And sometimes it's kind of the unwritten behaviors, or the unarticulated behaviors that people feel like, well, I can't speak up in this room because, right? And so it's interesting because for the where several leaders mentioned they had breakthrough moments where putting themselves out there, applying for a role that they felt that was outside of the scope of what they were capable of doing. And I think you articulated incredibly well. You're not going to check every single box, right? What you're looking for is somebody who's got the right aptitude, right attitude, right fit. And I think, that's where we have to be conscious. And when I say we, males, have to be conscious of making sure that you're looking at, how we pose questions through the lens of figuring out where the talent, the capability is, not so much where the perfect fit is and in the role. And I'm sorry, I'm taking a little bit of airtime here, but I think it's relevant to the point. One of the other leaders mentioned, it's basically on LinkedIn, by the way, I'll still share this with you, that look for the right company, not the right job, which I think kind of fits in you. So find the right company that has a supportive culture. It's willing to do things like this, like have the dialogue, right? Be able to open up and share what could be affecting us, because let's face it, sometimes barriers are self-imposed. They're not part of the culture. Conversely, there's a lot of times where the barriers could be cultural in the company, and it's just not being addressed appropriately. So I think having that dialogue and finding the right company with the right culture is critical. And in understanding how will the company invest in you as an individual, right? And then the other point, one of the other I think relevant points that were made is that if you're in a role for 3 to 5 years, it's time to move. So that idea that like I don't want to serve in a role because it's historically the type of role I should fit in. It's like, what do I do to break out of that? What do I do to kind of break the barriers? And I think, Seth kind of mentioned it. We have to be partners in that journey too. So.
I just wanted to follow up to one thing that you just mentioned, that and Gina, this is part of your story, and I'm gonna put myself out there. I guarantee you fell in love with Cisco the second that gentleman looked at you and said, "Hey, I don't care about your past. It's what you've done." And that is somebody who actually sees what others aren't seeing. Do you know what I'm saying? So that is so true. It's not that you're looking, at of course, it's the right company. That gentleman doing that tells her that's the right company.
Just want to check in with our virtual panelists. Priya, any commentary to what's been said so far?
Just one comment. I think I tried to talk and somehow the messaging didn't come, or then I realized I was on mute. So my bad. But no, one comment is, especially I had a break as well in my career. When I moved from India to here, I had almost 3 years of gap, and it was a challenge. So one is, at the time, I think the mentoring was not that much of a, looks like we lost the.
I think Priya, they should still be able to hear and see you. Oh, yeah. So they can all still hear and see you. We just can't see them. So keep going. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So I had a break as well, and it was a challenging time where I used that time. At the time, I think mentoring was not that popular, right? So I did not have any mentor, unfortunately. This is back in 2010. But I continued my education. I did my certifications and kind of things like that. So that kind of, I kept on a track while I was waiting for my visa to come back to this country. So that is just my story, but it's more about being persistent. And now we have so many different platforms where we have mentors, we can have female mentors, and there are so many different ways we can keep connected and socialize with our peers and whatnot. So.
Good. Any other questions from the audience? Online questions can be shouted out to. I just know it. All right. I think that's it. Oh, never mind. Hang on.
Going back to finding the right company, can you give us some examples of things to look for, or ways that we can talk to younger generations like Glenn's kids about what makes a company more desirable? Not every company has women in tech plastered all over it. And some of these larger companies like Cisco have a bigger platform to communicate that. But if you're not looking to join a giant company, what are some insightful questions or different ways that you can dig around to find out whether or not a company is a good fit for you?
Take that question. Great question, by the way. I am probably dating myself, but I come from the old school mentality, like you should be happy you have a job. And that's just not the way it is anymore. And we need to retrain our brains, because it is just as much an interview for the company and the people you're going to work with as it is them interviewing you. And so it's taken a long time. And with the job market's really good or it's really bad. And sometimes I think we just get in this mindset that I need to find a job, but in the long run, you're doing yourself a disservice by doing that. So one way, I think, we have the internet. People love to write, especially on message boards. You can find out a lot about a company and its culture. Not saying that everything is true, but you know, if you start to see that consistent messaging, maybe that's a red flag. Reach out to people on LinkedIn and just asking what their thoughts are of working for the company. And you know, my big thing is going back and networking. Do you know anyone, a friend of a friend of a friend that maybe can give you some insight? But then again, you know, smaller companies, they may not publish it, but just doing the research. How much do they give their, how much focus is put on special groups and EROs, and what initiatives do they take? Do they have company outings? What do they do? I think LinkedIn is a great resource and it's easy.
I think you also need to make a list of what you want, right? Like this, there was, you know, we were moving from Connecticut to Chicago and I'd still not given up on my career. I actually made a list of what would I want from the company if I'm still continuing to work. And you kind of have to first know what you want before you start looking for what is, does the company have it or not? So I mean, for me, like work-life balance was important, you know, like will I be at that time work from home was not non-existent. So it's like, okay, do I have a chance to work from home? I used to be a professor. The first thing I had to drop was being a professor because there was no way. There was no way to balance it. You cannot just keep canceling class and stuff. So those are the things that you, whatever you're looking for, have a list for it. And then, you know, and I did get lucky with my job.
I would like to comment from the WebEx as well, if it is okay.
Yes, Priya, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to comment on one is I absolutely love what she said in terms of what you want to do. Also, before you start looking for mentors, look for what opportunities you have, right? Different fields that you can explore within organization. Talk to different company female leaders and understand what different opportunities they have, whether it is EROs or technical opportunities or just different roles. And I think when we had this high school event, and those are a lot of questions around, you know, what do you do? What does a day in life looks like? And we had different panelists from different backgrounds. We have folks from customer success. We had folks from sales background, engineering background, just for them to understand what different opportunities out there. And the second thing is before they start looking for a mentor, it's important that they're aligning to the right leader or female leaders in that realm, what they're looking for. That way you're connecting the dots before you talk to someone. So that's just a few things that someone looking from outside to inside can do.
All right. And with that, we're going to probably bring this event to a close as we're coming up on time. So first, I want to thank our panelists for joining us today, giving us great discussion. And also thanks to the BWIT committee members that planned this whole event. Thank you. So thank you all for attending today. I hope you got some great insights out of this discussion. And, you know, for both virtually and in person. For those of you that are in person, lunch will be served out in the hallway. So enjoy. And for those of you online, have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.